welcome to today's video where we're going to be going through how to make a CPU mining build. And this CPU mining build is just going to mine CPU mineable coins. The most hot coin to mine right now using a CPU is Raptoreum. However, there's other coins and things that you can mine, such as Monero, which is a completely private blockchain. But more on that on a different video. In this video, we're just going to focus on how to build this. And first, we'll go through some of the components that you need to build this mining rig. The first component, of course, is going to be your CPU. Now, this mining rig for me is a little bit of a splurge. You definitely don't need the hardware that I have, specifically the extremely good processor, the extremely fast RAM, or even a liquid cooler for that fact. But this is just going to be a how to build it, and you can feel free to substitute parts with whatever you feel like purchasing. Right now, I think the best bang for buck is probably a 3900X if you can find them used and not MSRP. If not, you're going to probably have to look for a 5900X or something similar. You can go baller and get a Threadripper or even a 3950X such as I have done, but you really don't have to. So first things first, you get a CPU. Next, we're going to have to find a motherboard. Now there's plenty of motherboards that you can use, and honestly, the only thing that you need when you're choosing a motherboard is going to have a motherboard that supports the processor that you buy, because certain motherboards won't support older or newer processors, and sometimes there's a BIOS update to fix that. However, make sure when you are purchasing things that you find a motherboard that fits your need. And so for something like this, I looked for an AM4 motherboard that supported the 5000 series, which this ASUS TUF board that I selected does that and more. It has a lot of features and things like that you don't really need. This board was probably like $150 or so. I'll leave the links down below for everything that I purchased. But you could probably get away with something cheaper, like a $40 motherboard. And I actually happen to have some right here that I purchased from Newegg. And this was a refurbished board that I purchased from Newegg, or an open box, I can't remember. And now this is an ASUS CSM board, and I'll have the link to that down below. They only had 2 in stock, so I went ahead and bought them, but I think you can also buy them on Amazon. So I'll put the links down below. But this was like $40, and this honestly will do perfectly fine for motherboard for a CPU mining rig. So I do have 2 of them that I was able to purchase, and this is just kind of an overkill. I'm going to try messing with a bunch of things, doing some heavy overclocking to see what I can really push out of this system, and I'll keep you guys in touch with that later down the road when I finish all my testing. So you got your you got your CPU, you got your motherboard. Cool. What is next? So after you have your CPU and your motherboard, you are going to need a power supply. And what I have here is a Seasonic 500 watt 80 plus gold power supply. Now you might think to yourself, wow, a 500 watt power supply, that's not very big. Well, for CPU mining, you don't really need that much. You just need to cover the TDP for your processor. And this processor right here, I believe, has a TDP of like 120, and it usually tells you somewhere, but you can also Google it and it'll say, this is the TDP of this processor. Now, I can't really see it here on the box anywhere, but I know it's about 120. And with undervolting and underclocking even further, you might be able to get it down to like 80 or 60 watts. But that is a more advanced step, and we'll go in that in a different video. So for today, we're just going to go over the basics. And I chose this. Now, the reason I chose a gold power supply versus a bronze or a platinum power supply, or even the white 80 plus power supplies, is for reliability and price to performance. Now, I did find these on sale, so that's why I chose this specific one. But as far as power supply brands, I really recommend the Seasonic, Corsair, or the EVGA brands. Those power supplies have served me well over the years. And I have honestly not really had any big problems that weren't my own fault. So this power supply is perfectly fine. It really is just going to be powering the processor and the motherboard, and then a small graphics card if you have one. But we don't need one. And we only really need a video card, such as this one, which I use the 5450, the Radeon 1 gig card. And the reason I use this is it's a cheap card, it gets video, and then when I'm done with it, I can turn off the rig, pull it out, and then everything mines without me even really needing to see it. And the way I do that is through Hive OS. You can use other Linux distros and things like that if you don't want to use Hive. But for Windows, you'll probably need a graphics card. Otherwise, you won't really be able to control it headlessly. So you have your processor, your motherboard, and a good power supply. Like I said, I would really recommend something in the gold range because you know it's dependable. This one has a 7-year warranty, so if this is still mining in 6 years and it dies, I can get another one free of charge from Seasonic with no problems, and most of the gold rated ones do also. Some of the platinum ones have a 10 to 12 year warranty, and then the bronze usually have like a 2 or 3 year warranty, and the whites have like a 1 year warranty. So I really wouldn't recommend anything under a bronze. I would not even really recommend a bronze. They're okay. But for something that you want to be dependable and to run cool 24/7, I would really opt for a gold or higher power supply. Gold just happens to be the best bang for buck that I can find right now. If you can find a platinum rated power supply around 500 watts or greater for relatively similar prices, it might actually be worth doing that also. So the next thing that you're going to need for this rig is you're going to need a solid state or a hard drive or a SATA drive, or anything that you can boot and store the operating system on. You can even use a USB drive if you're using Linux. So I have a couple of M.2s laying around that I've used and even used some of these to help me plot with Chia and things like that. So I have a lot of these. I don't really need to purchase anymore, but for the sake of testing, I have ordered a bunch of cheap SSDs from Amazon, and I've tested them and they seem to work fairly well. So I'll put the link down in the description below for those. They're about $15, which will really cut your costs instead of buying a hard drive or a really nice brand new solid state. So whatever you got, the cheapest possible, that's what you want to do. So links will be down below. So after that, you are going to need some memory. Now, I chose this RAM because, well, for one, the FlareX series RAM that I usually use for Ryzen is out of stock. It is generally known as the best Ryzen RAM that you can use, so I'll leave that down below in case it does come into stock and you guys want to purchase it, because it is just amazing RAM, but it's about $200 or $100 depending on the sizes that you get. And for Raptoreum mining, you don't really need too much. I would say the 16 gig kit is fine, and if you want, you can build 2 rigs and split it with an 8-stick and an 8-stick in each build. But this was the next best available that I could find, price to performance wise. It is a fast RAM also. It's a 3600 DDR4 stick. There's 2 8GB sticks, and it is CL14 also. Now, for those of you that are not aware what CL is, it stands for cache latency, and it's the time it takes for something to reach the memory from like the processor. And so the shorter the time on that, the faster your processor can send things back and forth, essentially the more bandwidth that you have in your RAM, which also equates to higher hashes. Now, whether or not it is worth getting RAM with 14 cache latency or RAM with 16 cache latency is up to you. The hash rate difference on multiple coins is very low. So I would just get a overall decent stick of RAM. I'll link down below what I have here and the FlareX for you guys, but there's also cheaper RAM that you can use. You just want to make sure that it's about 3200 megahertz and keep the cache latencies as low as you can for your budget. Now, after that, you're gonna need a cooler for your processor. Now, some processors, as you can see, I have quite a few things over here. Some processors, such as this Ryzen 9 3900X, actually comes with a cooler inside of it. You can see it is a much bigger box. So I'm just gonna go ahead and open it really quick for you guys so you can see the difference. So open the box, here's the processor, and then inside that is an AMD Wraith cooler. Now these are pretty good coolers considering they come from AMD. The Intel stock coolers are actually hot garbage. So this is the cooler that comes with a lot of the 30 series or 3000 series processors. It also comes with the 2000 series and the 5000 series, but you have to be careful because certain processors don't actually come with a cooler. And the way you can tell is by the box, and usually the listing itself will also tell you. So as you can see from the box size, this box for the processor is significantly smaller than this one. This one is a square and this one's just like a rectangle, but it's about half the size. It doesn't really even need to be that size because in this thing is just a small processor and the rest is just fluff. So make sure you have a cooler and make sure it is a decent cooler. I really recommend using the Hyper 212 Evo, and I have that over here. So this is the Hyper 212 Evo from Cooler Master. This is the black edition. It costs slightly more. You get that premium tax on it. I just like the black edition because, well, it's black and it kind of matches the aesthetics. But if you're going for best bang for buck, just get the normal one. You'll save like $3 or $4 or $5. But that cooler is like $25 to $30 depending on where you buy it. Even up to $50 maybe, depending on which one you get. But it is probably the cheapest yet best cooler that you can purchase, considering this liquid cooler here was like $70. And I also have a Noctua cooler on my other 5950X, and that was like $100 and something or $200. So you definitely want to keep your price as low as possible. So getting processors that come with heat sinks, big win. You'll save a lot of money. Now, after you have all of your components, the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to pull the motherboard outside of the box that it comes with and grab yourself, if you use a SATA SSD, grab the SATA cables. If not, go. Linus drop tips is happening. So hopefully if you drop things, they're empty and don't have the motherboard inside. But as I was saying, go ahead and take out the motherboard outside and we're gonna place it on top. This is how I've built a lot of computers back in the day, is by building them on top of the box that they come with. So I'm actually gonna change the camera angle for you guys so you can see how I put all of this together. But before we do that, there's a couple of things that you're still gonna need. And one of those is gonna be a keyboard. And then you're also going to need a monitor with some sort of display cable matching whatever graphics you have. So let's head over to the motherboard. Here we are at the motherboard. Now I have taken it out and put it on the box. Now the reason I put it on top of the box instead of on top of the anti-static wrap is because the outside of the anti-static wrap has been known not to be anti-static, but the inside is perfectly fine. So unless you want to inside out that and put it up, don't worry about it, just put it here on top of the board. So the first thing that I'm gonna do on this is I'm going to install the processor. Now this processor, like I said, is a Ryzen 9 5950X. And what you are gonna do is you're gonna pull the processor out. You can see it has a bunch of pins, and you're actually gonna take this latch and pull it up. Now, once you have that latch up, you need to find an arrow. And the arrow for this motherboard is right here. It's really hard to see, but the arrow points in a direction. And at the bottom of the processor, you should also see another arrow. So that arrow on this processor is going to be right here. It's super hard to see, but it's a little gold arrow on this corner. Now you match those two arrows up on the motherboard and you install the processor as such. And you take this and you swing it down. Now, normally this is going to be where you're installing your cooler on top of, and it depends which cooler you get. Certain coolers require you to remove these plates. Now, if you get the ones from AMD, I don't think you have to. It really depends on which cooler you're getting. Now, since I am using this big liquid cooler, I'm actually going to need to remove these and the back plate on the motherboard. That is this thing right here. So feel free to skip over this part if you are not interested, but I need to do it because I'm installing a liquid cooler. And this is a screwdriver that came with my Noctua set. There's another one that came with the Cooler Master set also. So you will need a screwdriver. I did forget to mention that. Screwdrivers are pretty handy. I have an iFixit toolkit, but I left it at the farm. So we're going to be building everything in my new kitchen here for now. So you take them off like this. Not quite, alright. So it comes off. Take these. I really suggest you keep them somewhere safe. Just because if you ever need to install a cooler from a different vendor, you might need them. Or if you want to go ahead and sell the motherboard later, you're definitely going to need them to resell the motherboard. So I'm going to set this aside for now. I went ahead and took off that plate, and I pulled off the back plate, but I need to get the liquid cooler installed. So I am moving everything aside, grabbing this liquid cooler and opening it up. Now this liquid cooler is the Enermax Liquimax 3 RGB edition. So RGB means more hash rates, right guys? Now this is going to take a while for me to assemble. So I am going to assemble everything off screen. Alright, so now I have my liquid cooler installed. I got it hooked up, got the RGB and everything hooked up. We're going to move on to the RAM. Now for you guys, hopefully your cooler's not as big of a pain in the butt to install as mine is, so this would have gone way faster for you. So we're going to grab the RAM now to install it into the motherboard. And a thing to note is when you're installing the RAM, depending on how much RAM you're installing, you're going to need to follow some rules. And the rules go, if you are installing 2 or 1 slot, you're going to need to follow the color code. So please check in your little booklet and it'll tell you exactly where you need to plug everything in. So if I grab this booklet here, this is the AMD Tough booklet, and I go to the page about the memory, which I have earmarked for this. You can see it's talking about which slots to put everything into. Now, since I've used this board and its predecessor and everything in the same series, I know which slots to put everything into. It's going to be these 2 gray slots. And on the motherboard, it has a star written down, so it says, you can't see it, but it does say right here, it'll say DIMM A1, A2, B1, and B2, and B2 and A2 have a little star next to them, meaning that's where you're going to plug it in. If you didn't read the booklet, that's a handy way to tell you where to plug everything in. So I'm going to grab the memory out and I'm going to put it in the 2 gray slots, B1 and B2, as instructed by the directions and the motherboard logo star thing. Now, DDR4 is interesting. It has a notch slightly towards the middle, but it does go on a specific side. Now, if you take the RAM and you try to install it, and you notice that it's not gonna line up, take it out and flip it over. However, for this exact stick, this is the way right here, it's gonna be facing outwards. So I'm gonna take the first one, I'm gonna open up the latch, and I'm gonna do the one nearest the CPU first, just for ease. You're gonna take the side that doesn't have a latch, you're gonna push down, you hear that click, you push the second side down, and you hear that second click. Now I'm gonna do the exact same thing here with the second slot and get this hooked in here. So first side, second side, there we go. So now we have our RAM installed. Now, the next thing you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna wanna grab your solid state hard drive or whatever you are using to install the operating system. I've chosen to use this solid state since I have a bunch, and I'm just gonna use this M.2. I'm gonna plug it in here, put it down on the extra little piece that comes with the motherboard, and we're gonna screw it in if I can find the screw. There it is. We're gonna take the screw and we're gonna place it there, and we're gonna use a screwdriver. I don't have my screwdriver kit here, so I should probably buy another one. So I'm using my multi-tool to screw this in. It works really handy. It's actually really sharp and has served me really well. I'll put a link for that down in the description too if you guys are interested in looking for multi-tools. It's really nice. It's a Gerber one, and I've been using it for years. It still looks practically brand new. So that aside, I have everything plugged in now except for the graphics and the power supply. So since I opted to use a graphics card without any power, we're actually going to plug it in now. But if you have a graphics card that requires power, first and foremost, I recommend that you don't, because it's going to use a lot more power than one that doesn't require extra power, and efficiency is the name of the game for these systems. So I'm going to install that here on the first PCI slot, push this down, and then you just slide it in just like a normal computer essentially. So I'm going to keep it like that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to grab the power supply, and I'm going to zoom out here for you guys. Okay, so we're back here, and I'm going to go ahead and move this over, and we are going to grab the power supply. I'll make some room, and I've already taken it out of the box. So normally you're going to just take it out of the box. As you can see, not really anything special about it. The first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take the motherboard power cable, and that is a 24-pin cable. Now I'm going to undo this. Now every power supply is slightly different, so word of advice, do not mix cables between power supplies, and definitely never ever mix cables between power supply brands. You will end up starting a fire or shorting the power supply if you're lucky. I've had quite a few run-ins with that early in my computer building days before I really knew what was going on. So take this end here that has the 24 clip, and then this end here, and find out which one goes into the power supply. For me, it's going to be this 2 separated one, and the 24 pin is going to go into the motherboard. So this one that's separated, I'm going to plug it right into the power supply. This one has it labeled as MB. Some say 24 pin, and some say motherboard. So that's plugged in, and now I'm going to take this and I'm going to plug it into the 24 pin on the motherboard. Now the 24 pin is fairly long, and there is only one place for it to go on the board. The 24 pin usually is a 20+4, meaning some older boards or some really low power boards don't actually use that extra 4, and that's why they're kind of separated. Now most boards now just use the 24 pin, but if any of you run across that, that's why. Now I also have the CPU power cable, and here it says CPU/PCIe, which means you can plug that in there, and then plug this into the 8-pin or 4-pin on your motherboard, and that's usually located towards the top of the motherboard, which it is for me on this motherboard here. So I am going to plug that in, make sure the orientation is correct, and usually you can tell because it has little latches on the cable indicating the upwards direction. I'm going to take that and we are going to plug it into the motherboard. So now that we have everything plugged in, we are going to take our power cable and our trusty monitor, and we're about to get ready to boot the computer for the very first time, which we'll need to show you how to go and set up the motherboard BIOS /UEFI. That way we have everything ready for a system that does not need a graphics card and can be rebooted without us having to do anything. So plug that in. Make sure the power supply is in the off position, which is the O, and go ahead and plug it in. Now I'm going to move everything over a little bit, grab our monitor here, and I'm going to plug everything in to the monitor. That way you guys can see what we're doing in the BIOS. So we'll grab this here. Now, the way you are going to turn this motherboard on for the first time, so you're going to flip the power switch on the power supply. Some motherboards light up, this one lights up down here, some don't do anything, so that's okay. Now you have to short the motherboard to turn it on because we don't have a power cable. So I'm going to show you how to do that here. I'm going to rearrange the camera, that way you guys can see. So as you can see at the very bottom right of this motherboard, this is where the front I/O panel is, and I'm going to unzoom so you can see exactly where we are on this board. So we're in the bottom right on this motherboard. Now every motherboard will have it in a different spot, but usually it's towards the very bottom, besides all the front I/O things. And the front I/O input-output is like the USB ports, the power button, reset button, and things like that for the front. So on this board I've located it down here, and you can use your booklet to find out where it is. So we're going to go ahead and zoom in here, and a lot of the motherboards now, especially the nicer ones, will tell you what everything is. You can see that speaker, power LED are these ones. You got the reset HDD LED, power LED, and power SW. Now power SW is going to be these top two ones right here, and what you have to do is you're going to use like a flat screwdriver or something like this, and you're going to go ahead and make a short between these two. Now that is going to turn on the rig for the very first time. Alright, so now that the rig is booting, you're going to get a post screen, and this is where we're going to use that keyboard that we have plugged in to get to the BIOS. Now it's going to be different for everybody, because some BIOSes will post without and some will post with. So make sure you have that. Since we don't have anything installed on the SSD, it's going to post and go directly into the BIOS. So now that we're here, there's a couple of things that we're going to want to do. And in this ASUS motherboard specifically, we are going to turn on DOCP. Now, DOCP is like XMP for Intel. It essentially loads all of the performance stats for the RAM without you actually really needing to go in and tune everything. So that's really handy. We're going to go ahead and set that. After you have that enabled, we're going to go down and press F7, and that'll take us into the advanced mode on the ASUS motherboards. It's going to take you here to the main tab. You're going to scroll over once to AI Tweaker, just see that DOCP is still enabled on this, see that everything is still set up, and then we're going to head on over to Advanced, one tab over. Now you use your keyboard and mouse for all of this, just in case you guys have not been using your keyboard and mouse. You can also use the mouse itself without the keyboard if you want. I'm just a little old school and I find it easier. So after that, you're going to go into APM configurations and restore AC power loss, and you're going to want to you're going to want to go down to restore AC power loss, and you want to hit power on. Now what this does is it makes sure that if I were to go to the power supply right now and flick it off or unplug it, I could plug it back in and everything would boot back up without me needing to take my multi-tool or screwdriver and restart the system that way. So also another thing to check, make sure that Energy Star Ready is disabled. We don't want any power saving, anything like that. Here in the boot section, you're going to see that I have my SK Hynix SSD plugged in. Under option 1 and 2, it's going to show that. So that's totally fine. Now, if you don't have anything plugged in, it's not going to show up. So make sure you plugged in your SATA SSD or your NVMe SSD or hard drive or USB flash drive, if that's how you want to do it. And then we're going to go ahead and save changes and reset. And you're going to see a lot of these changes have happened. That's okay, so we're going to make sure we hit OK. And now it's going to reset and go straight into the BIOS again. Now this is where we are going to turn off, once it boots in and we make sure that it boots and posts like that, I'm actually going to turn it off and we're going to get to this for you guys. So now I'll take you over to my computer and I'll show you how to install Hive OS on your boot media. Alright, so here we are on the computer, and the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to open up a browser and you're going to want to navigate to hiveos.farm/install. And here is the page from Hive OS where you can grab everything you need to install Hive OS. So for this tutorial, I'm going to show you guys how to use the flashing utility that Hive has, just because it's going to be a lot easier than using Etcher or Rufus, in my opinion, for people that are fairly new to installing Hive. So we're going to click on Hive OS Drive Flashing Utility. And that's going to take you to this GitHub page where you can scroll down, and here where it says download.hiveos.farm, we're going to click on that. And it's going to take us to the Hive Downloads page. Now here at the Hive Downloads page, you're going to want to click on hiveosinstaller.exe. You might get a little pop-up saying, hey, are you sure you want to download? You're going to want to click Keep. It's going to freak out again, and you're going to click Keep anyway. Now it's going to download, and then when it's done, you can go ahead and open the file, and it will pop up here just like that. So this is the version of Hive OS that you're going to install. So you're going to select the top one as the newest and most recent version. Now here you're going to want to enter your farm hash. Now your farm hash is going to be in your Hive OS account. So if you don't have a Hive OS account, please go sign up for a Hive OS account and log in. Under settings, there is going to be a farm hash setting, and you're just going to copy that and you're going to paste it into here. So this is a fake farm hash, obviously. It's all 5s and A's. But it will work for demonstration purposes, and you're going to hit continue. Now it's going to ask you to select a drive. So click here and it's going to show you all the drives that you have plugged in that you can install on. So for this, I have a small SSD that I have purchased from Amazon, and we're going to use that, and I have a M.2 adapter also that I use to hook up the SSD via USB or USB-C, depending on how you want to do it. Very handy. I think the device is like $14 and the SSD is $14. And if you do multiple of these, it's going to save you money, and it's kind of handy to have. So once you've selected the drive that you want to image, you just hit flash, and it's going to wipe everything on that drive. So make sure that that drive is the one that you actually want to wipe and install Hive OS on. Now it's going to take a little bit just to install everything here, so we're going to wait for that. Now that it's finished, all you have to do is unplug the drive from your computer, take the drive, go plug it back into your rig and turn on the rig. Make sure it's connected to the network via Ethernet because it won't be able to connect to Wi-Fi for the first boot. You'll have to set that up later if that's what you want to do. And then you're going to wait a couple of minutes and it's going to show up in your Hive OS panel. Now here in Hive OS, since you have it booted, it's going to show up under your farm. So go ahead and click on your farm and it's going to show up something like this where it's going to say rig something with letters and numbers because we didn't set the rig's name. Now we can change that by clicking on the rig, going into the settings for the rig, and then here we're going to select the name that we want to call it, and I'm going to call it RAP7 and hit update worker. Now you're going to go back here to flight sheet and you're going to want to create a new flight sheet for this. So it's not going to have a flight sheet and it's going to complain that there is no flight sheet for this worker. So click on the worker. It's going to have no flight sheet. So we are going to want to give it a flight sheet. And to give it a flight sheet, like I said, we go to flight sheets. We're going to go here to flight sheets again. This is going to show all the flight sheets we have, and we are going to want to create a new flight sheet. So here we're going to click and hit RTM for Raptoreum. You're going to add a wallet. So here you're going to enter your wallet address for Raptoreum, which can be found from either the Raptoreum core wallet that you download from raptoreum.com or any other wallet that supports Raptoreum. And then you're going to name it. So you can name this Raptoreum wallet, whatever you want to name it, and then hit create. And then it's going to show up here like this. Now here's where you select your pool. These are the 3 pools that it shows up. Otherwise you can choose a completely different pool. I'm currently using the same pool that RabbitMiner is using, the 011 pool. So you can, for that, you can click config in miner. You can click on the miner, which for this, it's going to be CPU miner-opt. And you're gonna hit set up config. And then here you can change everything. Put in the pool's URL, the pool password if it requires one. Normally it's X or nothing. And then you're going to hit apply changes. And then that's going to be your flight sheet. You can name it, so you can call it Rap Flight and then hit create flight sheet. So this pool information is going to be different depending on which pool you use. So let's say, for example, you wanted to use our plant here, right? I've heard that our plant kind of does not pay out as much as other pools, so maybe choose a different pool. Like I said, I use the 011 pool. You can use Flock pool, you can use Supernova, whichever pool you want to use, and it automatically pulls the information for the pools. Flock pool is the biggest pool, but the problem is it has a bunch of the hash rate. So just on good values that us as miners do to make sure that the currency that we're mining does not get 51% attacked, we want to spread the hash. Now for Raptoreum specifically, it is 51% attack resistant, but that doesn't mean we should be pushing the buttons and getting over 51% hash on one pool. So I would recommend switching to a different pool and just configuring it here by entering the pool's address, the URL, the pass, and then it's going to pull the wallet and the worker name. So the wallet is going to be this, and then the worker name that we set, I set it to RAP7. You guys set it to whatever you want, or you could have kept it at that. So after you have this flight sheet, you click create flight sheet. You're going to see it's going to show up down here as a flight sheet. You're going to go back to the workers, and you're going to go ahead and click on the newest one, which is going to be this RAP7 for me. click on flight sheets, and then click on the rocket ship beside whichever flight sheet you chose. So I'm going to use my normal flight sheet. Here you can see in the miner I've configured it to use the Raptoreum 0.11 pool with that. And then I'm just going to hit this little rocket ship. And if I go to the overview, it's going to start mining everything. And that is how to set everything up. Thanks for stopping by and watching today's video, guys. If you found it helpful, please give me a thumbs up and maybe even hit the subscribe button right there. It really makes a big difference to the YouTube algorithm, so I really appreciate any of you guys that go ahead and do that. If you have any questions, like always, leave me a comment down below. That is the best way to get in touch with me. And I hope you guys have had a wonderful day, and we will catch you in the next one.